it's got some significant impacts on everybody in the organization, and I think it's going to make the organization much more powerful and stronger going forward. But it's going to take some more work to get there, and we're certainly facing some difficulties in the organization. We've also had in the last couple of years some tremendous success. So we're going to talk about that and then talk about how we're going to transition. So we'll talk a bit about our mission, and then I really want to talk about then how do we position this organization so that the legacy that was built in the last 60 years doesn't fade away, because the work that's been done by people over the last several generations definitely deserves to be preserved, and we have a lot to be really proud of in the group. So we'll start first with the mission, and that is, we changed this a bit slightly in our meeting with the outstation. We talked before about supporting voters, representing voters in the state of Washington, but it was really bigger than that. We looked at the different programs that we're involved in, and we changed it slightly to represent the interests of recreational voting. So not just voters, but everything around recreational voting. And I think that that's much more encompassing of the goals of the organization. And in a recent magazine article about the organization, which talked about the work that we've been doing, Andrea and I sat down with the reporter, and we tried to talk to distill the talking points of RBAW into what are the most important things about RBAW, and how do you describe RBAW to people that have never heard of this. So, we're trying to do the classic elevator pitch. How in 7 or 10 seconds do I actually talk about the organization and give people a good idea of what we do? Because hey, the Recreational Voting Association of Washington doesn't really just roll off the tongue very easily, but we certainly don't want to do a name change. But we wanted to talk to people about, what were the key buckets that we were focused on, and these were the 3 that we came up with. We're most known primarily for these days is our advocacy, the work that we're doing with our lobbyists in Olympia. Things that come up with legislation, testifying in front of committees and in front of regulators in Olympia, things about taxation, all of those types of issues. That's for probably the last couple of decades is what we're most known for. But on the other side of that, we also have the thing about awareness, and we've done more awareness campaigns in the last couple of years than I think we've ever done before, and that's reflected in a tremendous amount of publicity that the organization has gotten in television and in print. And so we're going to share that with you if you haven't actually seen that. And so that's really given us, I think, a much more public face in the last few years. And then also our legacy, which is the one area that we haven't focused on in decades, which is preserving and expanding areas of voting opportunity. And I think that this is an area that I feel very strongly about. It's what I talked about 4 years ago when I did my first annual meeting, is that our legacy is this 1950s purchase of Susha Island, which is gifted to the state in roughly 1960. And I think I can't remember the inscription that's on the sign now, but it's Andrew probably remembers it. What is it, from yachtsman to a gift to the state or something like that, of what we did. That we gifted this property at Susha Island, and I think most people here have probably been to Susha, right? Lots of you have been there. It is amazing how many people I talk to have no idea that RBAW was involved in the gift of Susha Island. And so I really had wanted to make it a focus of my tenure at the organization to expand that. I really thought that there was an opportunity for us to grow opportunities to expand recreational voting. I wanted another Susha Island. Now, buying an island wasn't easy in the 50s, and it's sure not easy today, right? The prices have definitely changed, but I still think, the price that was paid at the time seemed like probably a huge price to buy that, and so I'm still not afraid of that. But, having the opportunity and being in the position to do something like that is really key to us. And, I'd really like to see, given the pressures on recreational voting and the price of properties these days, if we're going to lose a marina, we're going to lose an island, we're never getting that back. And you can see that more and more people are going to be able to buy up properties that we'd be interested in having as recreational parks. And so we need to move aggressively and as quickly as possible to try and preserve some of that for long-term recreational voting. And I think that's an incredible legacy to tell people, you're involved in saving a property for recreational voting for public use that will go on in perpetuity. And I think that that's an important legacy of the organization. So I'm going to talk about some specific examples of all three of these. Look back on the next slide. The advocacy part is super important to the organization. We have a big announcement here today, if you've probably read it already, that our longtime lobbyist, Doug Levy, is retiring, which is an extraordinarily good thing for him. And our new lobbyist is actually here today. So we're going to enjoy introducing you to him. And I think he's going to be a great person for the organization going forward. But the demands on our advocacy work these days is exploding. And so we've never had so many more issues to deal with. And so when we met at our offsite, somebody very intelligently asked the question, are we doing too much? Right? How do we possibly do all this? We're an all volunteer organization. How can you possibly be dealing with all of these different agencies at the local, state, and federal level, all that are having an impact and a pressure on recreational voting? And we tried to go through the list, and we were very unsuccessful in going through the list and figuring out what we could drop off, because this stuff is really important, and nobody wants to give up, their key issues. So the work that we've done this year with the Seattle Harbor Patrol, in fact, this has actually been over the course of the last couple of years. We think the Seattle Harbor Patrol actually does a pretty good job. They do an important job out there. They're patrolling 200 miles of coastline in the Seattle area, and they went from 3 boats down to 1. This defund the police thing happened. The number of patrol officers that are out there are way down. They've actually had equipment problems where they couldn't even fix the boats so they could be out on the water. So we got involved in that. And I think we were very influential in helping make sure that they got the right staffing level there. And that we were also able to help make a point about the funds that were needed in order to keep the boats on the water, and how important it was for everybody's safety to actually have that resource out there. We had a great interview that was on Como News. Our legislative director, Steve Finney, did a fantastic job with the reporter. This was like a 3.5-minute piece on Como News, and really highlighted the work that needed to be done on behalf of the Seattle Harbor Patrol and recreational voting. The work that was done with the organization related to Andrews Bay. We have a lot of, frankly, boisterous people on their boats in Andrews Bay, but it's also the only place really in the lake for those people that boat on Lake Washington where you can anchor. And so the local residents were very unhappy. They wanted to ban any anchoring in that particular location. So that was going to be a contraction of the recreational boating opportunities. We did great work mobilizing our members to get out there to educate people about how important it was to be respectful of the neighborhood and to preserve that voting opportunity for us. And so I think we just did amazing work there. And I think that it's going to continue to take more work, but we've definitely pushed that back a bit. And we've got good support to make sure that Andrews Bay remains open to recreational voters. And we just got to be a little better behaved, at least some of us, when they're out there. The Mind the Zone campaign, we'll talk about that a little more on awareness, but this is the main issue related to the interaction between all of the watercraft on Lake Union and the seaplanes. And we were able to get a big grant this year. We received well over $100,000 to put into an education program to make sure that there's no conflict out there between recreational boaters, paddle boarders, and the seaplanes. We think the seaplanes are an important part of the community. I think a lot of us here probably use the seaplanes to get to our boats or to have parts flown to our boats when they break in beautiful places up north, very common. And so we built a really terrific partnership with the Seaplane Coalition there on the lake and local government officials in order to roll out the program. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. But I do want to just note everybody's got the Mind the Zone water bottles here, which are parting gifts for you today. And I think they're a great billboard for the organization going forward. And then the last is just the pump out area. This is actually something we're dealing with not only at the local level, but also at the state level. Pierce County has really recently stepped up their game and is rolling out more mobile pump out throughout Pierce County. And we've been very supportive of that particular effort. So it's a great local effort there. And then on the state level, lots of work at the state level. Back up one. There we go. So incredible work that's been done this year around derelict vessels. And we've had a lot of derelict vessels. This one's actually fairly recent, just happened a couple of weeks ago that we were dealing with a big disaster. And, a couple of $100,000 was spent to deal with this particular issue of a derelict vessel that broke free and broke up and caused quite a bit of damage and environmental damage. But we met with the derelict vessel program at DNR here about a month ago. And I have never seen the guy that runs this program so happy. His name is Troy Wood. And he was, I mean, he's a pretty serious guy. And he had a smile on his face because we had basically allowed them to have millions of dollars in more funding that we helped secure for them to put into the derelict vessel program. And he said, hey, we got 300 vessels on the list, but we got 100 vessels out of the water this year. We've never taken more vessels out of the water, and it's increasing now every single month. They've been able to expand the voluntary turn-in program. There used to be limits on that in terms of the size of the boats and the number of boats that they could take every year, that people could just basically walk in and hand over the paperwork and the boat would get pulled out of the water. They've started a recycling program using the money that we've helped them get so that they can start taking these fiberglass boats and chopping them up and putting them into other products like cement, and taking the wood boats and destroying them, and the cement boats and the steel boats. All of that, they want to have a comprehensive program for recycling. There's no other state in the country that has anything like this in terms of the derelict vessel program. You talk about places in Florida, you know, there's thousands of abandoned vessels out there that they're trying to deal with. And we're really leading the country in this. And this is directly the result of work that was done by RBAW to put through a bill in the legislature, which takes some of that watercraft excise tax that we don't like to pay, right? And it's an unfair tax on boaters. But we said, well, geez, if you're at least going to take it from us, we're going to divert it to something that makes sense to us and helps the recreational boating community. And that's what we've done. And that was a huge win for us to get that through the legislature. And it went through almost unanimous. I think it was unanimous in the Senate and had like 2 negative votes in the House. So, you know, this is not a political issue. This is just something that needs to be done. And we were at the forefront and we did that deal. The other thing that we really keep a close eye on are fees and taxes. You know, we're annoyed by most of them, I have to say. But last year, when they were proposing doubling the watercraft excise tax, that was going to have a huge impact on recreational boaters. And particularly it was annoying because they were going to double the watercraft excise tax and put the money in the roads. Okay, so it wasn't going to go anything towards recreational boating. So you think about what you're paying for your recreational watercraft excise tax every year. I know people in here that probably pay a couple $100 a year. Some people probably pay $800 or $900 a year. There's some of you that probably pay a couple $1,000 a year. That was going to double. And because of the work that we did to immediately get in front of the legislature, we were able to defeat that and to push back on that tax. And I think that basically with the response that we had and the way that we were able to respond so quickly, I'm pretty confident that that isn't going to come up again. But I can assure you, if it does, we're going to be there to make sure that we push back on that unfair taxation. The other area of taxation this year that we've really struggled with is the depreciation schedule that they use for calculating that watercraft excise tax. And this year, I think we've been very successful in pushing back on that. We think the rates that they had on that was way too high. And so in the first round of initiative that we did with them, we've been able to push that back significantly, and they backed off on the watercraft depreciation schedule. And at least for the boats, for the first 10 years of the life of a boat, from the time you buy it and the first 10 years you own it, we've been able to drive the rates down. We are still not happy with the way the rates are for the latter half of the boat's life. But we're able to get them to admit that boat lives were longer, and so it would depreciate further. And we're continuing to have discussions with the Department of Revenue about the taxation level and how we get a more realistic number of what boats are worth in those later years of their life. And they've been very good, at least, about agreeing that they need to meet with us, sit down with RBAW and have the discussion with us about what's the right way for them to determine that taxing level. And if we weren't here, I can assure you there would have been nobody that was going to go down there and fight that fight on behalf of recreational boaters. And that's putting money into everybody's pocket every single year, because you're writing a check for that every single year. And then finally, there's been a lot of course, notice about whales in the state of Washington, and we've worked well with all government agencies and the regulators about, you know, the distance we need to stay, particularly from the southern resident killer whale population. But you should all know that right now, the 200 and 300 yards that we're supposed to stay away from those whales, which we certainly abide by. There's a proposal right now for that to increase to a minimum of 1,000 yards. That's a new rule that came out this week that they're putting out there for discussion. And so we're going to have a discussion. It's going to be difficult. I'm a big supporter of the whales. I don't want to see anything happen to them. I don't know how I'm going to be able to see 1,000 yards to see a killer whale to know if I'm within the right distance or not. So we've got to just talk about, hey, what is the right, what's the right strategy from a regulatory standpoint for dealing with these issues related to marine mammals, because they're an important part of our environment and our ecosystem. We also have to make sure that there's something that we can all understand and that we can figure out how to know if you're encroaching on them, because right now I think that's going to be difficult to do. So we're going to have those conversations. So those are just that. Then at the federal and even the international level, we're seeing increasing demands on RBAW. There's been a lot of work that we've done already with the National Marine Fisheries Service. This is about your organizations or the marinas that you either dock your boats at or your yacht club that have docking facilities. We've worked for the last 3 years to make sure that we have extensive input into the process for what it takes to get a permit to actually rebuild your docks, because they've made it very difficult and expensive to do that. And for the most part, they've made it almost impossible for any new marinas to be built. So it's important for us to make sure that we had a seat at the table and we could understand what it was going to take in order for us to rebuild the facilities that we have. And I think we've had a positive impact on them. They're still looking to extract large fees in terms of environmental credits, but at least we are confident that you can get a permit now to do a dock rebuild. Whereas 3 years ago, you couldn't get a permit to do a dock rebuild. Everything was completely in limbo and they weren't approving anything. So we at least have a process that you can go through and get that permit so that you can actually do that work. Another issue that's come up very recently for us, but not recently, it's been, the conversation's been going on for a long time, but it's about the removal of the Snake River dams and what is going to be the impact on recreational boating. That will wipe out a lot of recreational boating for our Eastern Washington members. And that's going to take out a lot of yacht clubs, and marinas will not exist if those dams come down. And so we're going to have a seat at the table as those discussions continue, because different administrations come in and they're in favor of removing those dams. But other state agencies are not in favor of removing them, or when the federal powers change, then we have other administrations come in and say that they don't want to remove them. So it's important that we continue to be involved at that level. And then there's two issues that have come up here just in the last probably 120 days that we've noticed that we're following now, because we're worried about what's going to be the impact of them coming from the East Coast to the West Coast. And the one is this proposal that's out right now. It's got the East Coast up in arms right now, which is that all boats basically over 30 feet in length will not be able to exceed a speed limit of 10 miles an hour along most of the East Coast of the United States for fear of striking right whales. Because there's been, I think, 4 documented cases of recreational boats hitting whales. I think there's been at least 1 fatality of one of those whales. But they're basically shutting down, or the proposal is to shut down huge sections of the East Coast for that. Now, this restriction had already been in place for boats over 65 feet, but that doesn't affect typically most of us. And because of the sensitivity of whales out here, we need to follow this issue and make sure that we understand what's going on. There's been great uproar on the East Coast about this, because a lot of the fishing charters, you get on those fish boats and they haul, right, to get out 20, 30, 40 miles so that they can fish out there. And that business is going to evaporate if they have to abide by this restriction where they can't go over 10 miles an hour. So that kind of proposal, it wouldn't surprise me to see coming here, because we already have slow zones now of 7 knots around the killer whales. And there's certainly been proposals that we pushed back on that have asked for huge swaths of the Salish Sea to be throttled down to very, very slow speeds. So those are important. And then there's also been issues that we're just seeing rising up in Florida related to boat rentals and what it's going to take to actually be able to rent a boat. And the insurance rates that I have seen, I've talked about rents going up by fees going up for rentals, insurance going up by 700% in order to cover that. So for those of you that are part of boat clubs, or you maybe rent your boat out part of the time, those are going to be important issues also. And then lastly, just because of the unique geographic location of Washington, we have a great relationship with the Council of British Columbia Yacht Clubs, and we meet with them every year to talk about important issues going back and forth between the 2 boating populations that we have here in British Columbia. And so our group meets with them And, we talk about things like invasive species, what does it take for vessels to come and go? That was particularly important during the COVID eras. Also a great relationship with what they've done with their marine parks up there. They've actually been a real leader in buying up islands and turning them into preservation areas, and their stern tie program, which probably many of you have taken advantage of. Things that we've seen up there that we would like to do. I think there's things that they see that we're doing down here that they would like to see in British Columbia, like pump outs. That would be nice, right? We'd like to see more stern ties down here. They'd like to see more pump outs up there. So good stuff going back and forth between the two organizations, and again, very important. So next slide. So that just gives you a hint of the things that are going on the advocacy level. And again, as I was saying, there wasn't anything up there that we really wanted to stop doing, right? We need to keep doing this. This is incredibly important stuff, and it impacts all of us. But the other thing that we really want to talk about is how do we expand voting? So we've got advocacy. How do we expand voting and make sure that we have additional opportunities? And so when I first did this meeting 4 years ago, I had suggested that we should buy a property. Can you come to the next slide? And I had suggested that we buy this dilapidated marina down in Mayo Cove, the Lake Bay Marina. And lo and behold, we actually got that done. So we did buy the Lake Bay Marina. I told Doug, who unfortunately hasn't been able to join us here yet today, that I didn't want it to be 60 years before we bought the third one. Okay, right? We need to do more of this. So we were able to come up with the money. It's about $1.7 million we raised to do the acquisition. Unique combination from individual contributors, Pierce County, and then we got an RCO grant with partnering with the DNR to complete the acquisition. And this is going to be like a Susha Island, just literally just a few miles from here. So it's incredibly close to Tacoma and Seattle, and compared to going to Susha, it's a heck of a lot closer. So we imagine this to be just an incredible outstation for not only individual recreational boaters to go, but for all of our yacht club members to go. And I can see every yacht club in Puget Sound wanting to book at least one weekend a year out there. We think it's just going to be an amazing place. I will tell you, it's not in good condition. It was literally falling apart at the seams. We got an amazing amount of work to do out there that's going to take millions of dollars. But we've already started on that. We've removed the old docks, and here are the first improvements that we're doing. We are meeting right now with the grant organizations. We have a grant in process. We've already pitched it from a technical feasibility standpoint in round one. I think it's next week. We're going to do the formal pitch, where it will then be rated, and we're asking for $1.7 million to do the first round of improvements there. Number one, we want to rebuild the boat launch so that you have the ability to bring small boats out there too. It's not just a big boat marina. There is a dilapidated boat ramp there. It's about 30 feet long. So it's got to be high tide to get in and out. But there is a ramp there. We'd like to see that extended out to, maybe 100, 150 feet. And then also there'd be a launch dock there too, so that you could tie up to it as you're waiting. The trailers are coming in, and a low float so that you can bring stand-up paddle boards and kayaks and other human powered craft in there. This is an incredible place. If you haven't been there, Mayo Cove, it's pretty shallow. It gets really warm in the summer. It's a nice place to go. The access road needs to be paved and regraded. We need to have better parking there. It skirts a little creek. We need to reinforce the wall there so that the road isn't sloughing off into the creek. That's important. We need to have some restroom facilities there. So in this first round, we're looking to install a flush toilet restroom there. It'll just be a small one to begin with, but hopefully one that can be expanded into the future. I talked about some parking, and then we have to do a lot of work in terms of modernizing utilities for other work that's to come. We have an old underground fuel tank that needs to be removed. We need to bring in more high voltage power there. The power isn't good, so we need to get a transformer set there that can bring us in, the kind of 3-phase 480 volt power that we're going to want for upgraded pedestals on the docks. And that is actually the future of this property. So it's going to be great, we think, for the entire community, but it's going to be great for recreational boating. It's going to be an amazing facility. And just to talk about where we're going to go back up left. So that's the old dock configuration. They were completely falling apart. 2 weeks after we bought the property, 4 boats sank there. Okay. So we had a barge in there, pulling boats out. We had to get all the boats out of there. We evicted them. There was like 3 of the boats could actually move on their own power. One of them was in decent condition. We found in moorage, which was good. But everything else we cleared out. The pilings are still there. We managed to get it so that we could get the docks out of there because they were a nuisance in terms of squatters moving into those docks. So we wanted to get them out of the water, but we were also able to retain the credit for removing them out of the water with the Army Corps of Engineers. And the next phase of the project, after we do this uplands grant, is we'll do all new docks. We'll upgrade the pier. We'll put in a new fuel dock. There'll be new pump outs. There'll be new pedestals. And then we'll start working on grants for the restoration of the building so that the yacht clubs and individual users can actually rent that building and take advantage of the amenities out there. This is a really cool place. It's got a really nice, I call it a vibe, a feel. You go out there, it kind of feels like the 1950s. And it's a tremendous place. You can fish, you can crab, you can swim. It's going to be just a jewel in the crown of recreational boating right up there with Sushi. So the last thing I'll talk about is that we have a unique opportunity, I think, to expand it. This is done under the RBAW Conservancy trademark and organization. Doug Levy and I met with Commissioner of Public Lands Hillary Franz last week in downtown Seattle. She's very interested in partnering with us. They have a number of dilapidated properties and structures around the Salish Sea that they're concerned about it. They call it their dirty dozen, probably their dirty 3 dozen. And they want to work with us to actually grow our organization and help them. We can figure out which of these properties would make sense for us to acquire and then turn into future marine parks going forward. So I think we got a great opportunity to expand that. Okay. All right.
Oh, what happened?
Okay. How am I doing on time? I'm over.
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. All right. Well, sorry, folks. I got you here. All right. So I want to talk about awareness. A couple of fun things. So we'll jump right to that. We've done a lot of conversations with people. We're talking to a lot of people. You know, we have 10,000 members, right? Between the yacht clubs and the individual members, we have 10,000 members. Incredible number. We want to talk to all 10,000 of them. At the same time, there's 250,000 recreational boaters in the state of Washington. I want to talk to all 250,000 recreational boaters. So that's the real goal for us. So some of these next things that we're doing, I want to show you and take a look at this work. I think the first one up is our Mind the Zone campaign. This campaign was run by Andrea. Unbelievable work that was done here to educate people about the lake. And let's just roll the video. It's phenomenal.
That's a lot of our technology.
There's nothing more Seattle than enjoying Lake Union in the summer. Everyone's there, from big boats to little ones, and of course, the iconic seaplanes. The lake can be a very busy place, and while those on the water do have right of way over those in the air, if you see the line of buoys in the middle of the lake start to flash yellow, move 200 feet east or west to give the planes a little room. And this applies to all types of boats, sailing, power, and paddling. The warning system of 5 buoys running from south to north is in place during the busy season, from Memorial Day to Labor Day. Whether taking off or landing, pilots have to find a runway between all of the boats. And on a nice day, that can be a tight squeeze. You can still cross the lake, but as you approach the zone, be aware of your surroundings and consider moving through quickly. Don't tie up to the buoys, and if you are near one, be on the lookout for a plane to come in or take off and be ready to move. But also know that some planes do land without using the buoys. So keep a heads up and listen out for them as well. There's plenty of water out there to share, and we're all part of the Seattle summer experience. Let's keep Lake Union lively and beautiful. And when you're out this summer, be sure to mind the zone.
Okay, that's great. So great branding for RBAW. Really just lets people know that we're out there. And, you know, one of the other fun things about voting, of course, is pumping your vote out. So I was invited to participate in an education video about pump out. So this is work that we did with Pierce County and it's rolling out literally this week. So let you see that.
Talking about food.
POOP. It's poop.
Voters need a place to put their food. We can't dump it into Puget Sound.
It's a mobile. It's been awesome for us in the shellfish industry here in South Puget Sound.
Having a mobile pump out vote is not only an added service to our recreational voters, but it keeps our bay clean.
This is the only way to go. I mean, get a fleet of these around Puget Sound. It's really smart.
So one of the great parts about being a voter in Puget Sound is mobile pump out is free.
Our Clean Fast Land Grant program, funded by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, supports the conservation of threatened and endangered species.
We support stewardship. Conserving, protecting, and enhancing habitat for fish and wildlife has always been the service's number one priority. In this case, it's number two.
Every time I meet a voter out on the Sound, they tell me what a great service this is and how much they appreciate my time. There are a lot of code brands out there.
Partnerships.
Pierce County. It's about people.
Preservation.
Stewardship practices.
Mobile pump out.
Big Harbor is a no poop zone.
Don't be a party group. Pump out your vote.
Okay, so that one was, that was a lot of fun to go down and film that. A lot of takes on that. But we really do see that what we really want to see happen is we do want to fleet of mobile pump out boats that provides free pump out anywhere that you want it Puget Sound. That is actually the ultimate goal we'd like to see. We're working with the different organizations and counties that are interested in that, so that you can just basically use an app or make a call and the boats are going to be out patrolling. And we just think that's a great way just to encourage people to do the right thing. I mean, a lot of times you pull up at a pump out station and the equipment's dirty or it's broken. A lot of times it's broken. We think that this is just a great way to expand our impact in terms of the environment and make sure that we're not having a negative impact. Okay, so next slide. So I'll just finish up here my comments with talking about, hey, how do we sustain the legacy of the organization going forward? And so if I can have the next slide, please. So I would just say that we've done a tremendous amount of good work here. And I will say that when I took over this role 4 years ago, we had a leadership crisis. We were going into the annual meeting and nobody wanted to be the president. We didn't have a full slate of directors to fill out the board. And so I volunteered, I jumped in, and the thing is now it's been 4 years, and you know, I think I'm term limited out at this point. You know, we really need to figure out what's the way to drive this organization forward, because volunteer organizations, as you guys all know, are very hard to organize and maintain. We're fortunate in that Andrea is an incredible organizer, you know, you see this in your yacht clubs too, right? You know, they kind of ebb and flow depending on who's in leadership at the time and how much energy and time they have to bring to the table. It's really difficult when you have an all volunteer driven organization. Our mission and our programs have grown, and there is nobody else like us. I mean, there are other trade organizations that deal with the commercial sides of recreational boating. There's interest groups that are interested in the fishing aspect of recreational boating, but we're the only organization that's kind of got an umbrella over all of it. And we don't think that there's anybody to replace it. So we have to make sure that we understand how to keep this thing going. And I will tell you right now, we're having a leadership crisis again. So I had intended to step down at the end of this year, and I met with the governance committee, and they asked me to stay for one more year, and I agreed to do that. But I don't think it's probably healthy for any organization to have one person leading it for, you know, a particularly long period of time. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that, but we also have several other key positions in the organization that are vacant now. Our legislative director has been doing the job for, Steve, how many years? 7 years. He's stepping down. He can't do it anymore, and makes total sense. Linda has just done an incredible job as our secretary of the last several years, but she's stepping down. We don't have a person to put into that role this year. We're fortunate that our treasurer is staying. Andrew's going to stay for 1 more year. And we have a real issue. We also have a problem in directors for the organization. We don't have enough people to fill the slate. You're going to see when we adopt the slate this year, we're leaving several positions actually vacant because we want to go out and we want to recruit the right people for those slots going forward. We need to reach out into our membership. We need to reach down into our clubs, and we need to get more diversity. We need to get younger people involved, and we need to get people that have a lot of good technical skills too. Because we got an incredible technical team running this today, and what the work that we've done with modernizing our membership system and moving all that to the cloud, and so that we can do renewals and our communication, all that kind of work, it's really done by people that have deep technical skills, and we actually need that. So we're going to present to you a slate today that's got a lot of holes in it, and that's actually on purpose because we're going to reach out and we're going to pick individual people that we think are going to be the right people to fill those slots going forward. And we're also lagging a pipeline of new delegates. I got involved in this organization because the former delegate from the Thai Yacht Club invited me to an RBAW dinner. And I went to the dinner, and I've been a member of the organization now for almost 10 years. And that's what we need everybody in this room to do, is look into your yacht club and find out who's the right person that you can bring to a meeting. And they can join by Zoom now too. You don't have to come to the meeting in person. Okay, so next slide. So we have a crisis, and so here's how we intend to fix it. I don't believe that given the growth and scope of the organization anymore, it can be done on an all volunteer basis. We believe that we need to hire a full-time executive director. And the analogy I would like to say is that we can steer, but we probably shouldn't be driving. Okay. And I have a niece, she can steer the boat, but she can't drive the boat, if you know what I mean. And that's kind of where we are at this point. It's almost become a full-time job in and of itself. And I was able to do that in the first couple of years, and it's been going down as other commitments have come in for me, and I can't continue to contribute at the level that I have in the past. And I think that's probably true for anybody in a volunteer organization. And so we wanted to do that with a full-time executive director. We have an admin person that we keep for about 10 hours on staff, who's doing a really nice job for us. Hopefully we'll even be able to increase the number of hours that we have there. We talked to our nominating and governance committee, and they've given us some great leadership in terms of how do we go about hiring an executive director. We have work to do to kind of clean up some things in the organization. We have to write a job description. We have to have a selection process. How would we grade these candidates? We have to have a more formal process for how we bring our board members in. Right now, you get elected to the board, you're just kind of thrown in. There's no board education process. Andrew's actually done a good job of creating a board education process. Before we had nothing. Now we have some stuff. We need more. And really let people know what are the responsibilities you have as a board member, what's going to be expected of you, what's going to be the contribution. Those are things we need to talk to board candidates about before we actually bring them onto the board, because we want the board members to step up and actually put in more effort to the positions there. And we have a list of requirements of things that we need them to do as a part of the organization. And we have some organizational documents to work on too. So we're going to have a consultant come in and help us put all of that together so that we're in a position to hire this person, hopefully in the early to mid part of next year. And that's a pretty momentous change for the organization going forward. Which you're probably all going, hey, that just sounds great, but how are we paying for it? Right? So I hope you all brought your checkbooks. So this is going to require us to raise the dues. This is something we've been talking about for a couple of years now. We talked about that we had our legacy yacht clubs and we had our individual members. The individual members of the organization paid $20 a year to join. And all of our yacht club members were grandfathered in, or not grandfathered in, but had a dues level of $2 per member per year. So if you have a 100-person yacht club, your dues to RBAW is $200. Okay. Just frankly, $2 just isn't enough to do what we're doing anymore. We need a lot more money to do it. So we created another level of membership. We call it sustaining members. And for that, the yacht club writes us a check directly for the same as an individual member, which is $20 a year. So we are talking about an $18 dues increase per person for our yacht club members. And we know that that will be a concern for some clubs, and I'll talk to you about the clubs that have done it. You just heard Tyee, a Grand 14 club, just did it, just recently, put it in their budget. We think that, we understand that people are gonna need to budget for it, so we're gonna try and get a process set up here and talk about how we're gonna do it in terms of stepping through it in the next couple of years. We think a two-step approach makes a lot of sense, beginning with your next renewal. The yacht clubs renew basically every month, depending on when they join.
Every year.
I mean, every year, yeah. Back up, please.
Sorry.
That's okay. And so that's gonna be an increase. So, probably think about it's going from like 2 to 10 and then 10 to 20, something like that would be the right thing to think. That's not finalized. That'll be up to the directors to make that decision and vote on it at an upcoming board meeting, but that's what we're looking at doing. We've already had really good progress in moving forward. And getting a large number of people to do this, but we certainly have more work to do. The idea here is to give us a budget of around $200,000 a year to execute on all the programs that we're doing. We're going to increase our corporate and sponsorship members. We've had some good success in doing this, and we brought in, I think, 15,000 this year in memberships, where we charge people roughly $5,000 to be an RBAW sponsorship member. So that's been a great help to the organization. And then finally, because of the work that we've done in the finances in the last several years, we quit losing money about 3 or 4 years ago. We've actually been making money, and we've increased our cash reserves quite a bit, which is in a good position to be in. And if there's ever a time to invest, it's when your cash reserves are higher than they've ever been. And so we think a combination of the dues increase stepped in, the corporate sponsorship, and spending down some of our cash reserves will allow us to execute on this strategy going forward. And so that's how we intend to pay for it. Okay. Sustaining clubs right now, we've got quite a few out there. I think it was we just had great success. I mean, and just up and down the line here, some of the biggest clubs, I think, in the Puget Sound, great names up here. Obviously Tacoma coming in, that was, I think, our largest so far. Olympia, Maidenbower, Gig Harbor came on. Wayne and I went out and made the pitch at Gig Harbor. We'd love to come out to the clubs and make the pitch and tell them at a general meeting why it's important to be part of RBAW and why this is important going forward. Tyee is our newest member, which I think was just last week. Is that right?
Yes.
Last month.
And West Seattle
West
is
Seattle.
actually a brand new club.
Brand new club, right? Yeah. And the other thing we made a decision is if there's any new clubs formed, the only way you can come in is at the sustaining level, basically. But sustaining is going to just kind of be the new floor of just what it is to be in RBAW. And we think that $18 a year more. If you own a boat, that's not much. That's like one dock line, right? And not even a good one. Yeah, right. It's a couple of cups of coffee. And so with the value that we're bringing in terms of the taxes and the regulations and making sure that that's kept in check, we think that this is an extremely good investment. And it's good because we can share the cost across thousands of voters and then have an enormous impact. So if you think about what we've done previously, and now with these new resources and a full-time executive director to drive the organization, I just see incredible things for the organization going forward. Next slide. And so that is the update of the president's report.